Today I'm in my virtual workspace while I'm researching the metaverse from within, and I've come across an article, and it makes me want to say, beware of where you get your definitions from. That's an innocuous looking article. It's really long and detailed, and it's not too terrible, but there's a couple of points, and it's mostly about Decentraland. And clue number one is they call it the metaverse's early mover. However, I have books from 10 years ago talking about the metaverse. I've been in it for 12 years. It's been on for longer than that. It's been ideal since the 80s. But I guess we're talking more about the actuality and ideals. And even then, the headline's wrong. But sometimes that's an editor. Ignoring the fact that the person writing this could be the editor. Anyway, and we have actionable insights. Virtual property can make real money. Yeah, I remember like a 60 Minutes and CNN thing about that years ago. Digital cities are faster, and we have a lot of that. We're still just at the beginning, this is true. It doesn't matter if it's been going on for years and years. Until there's wide adaptation, to a certain extent, there could already be argued, I suppose. But there's so many points here that we need to focus on just one or two and not do a research paper. So there's only one metaverse. While the buzzword's meanings are often stretched in different configurations, there's a clear definition. It's simply the internet, updated to accommodate spatial experiences. Okay, that's one way to put it. And we have a whole thing here about railroad linking Salt Lake City to LA was completed, and how it turned into Los Angeles, and how Decentraland is now bigger than Las Vegas, and so on and so forth. I have the same thing, A couple years ago, before the pandemic, Second Life, the landmass is bigger than San Francisco, and has just about this many concurrent users, I think they claim, and stuff like that. But but we could say a lot of railroads in a lot of cities, so fine. So in today's piece, we're going to talk about the metaverse and Decentraland's origins, and I think this would be it for right now. I want to do strange journeys, but that's another topic, and how the system works. So for metaverse, i.e. the articles or the videos that say what is the metaverse, we're laying on a concrete definition for a much abused and misused buzzword, and also Decentraland's origins. I'm going to skip ahead actually, because I talked about this in my last video, my first impressions of Decentraland, and let's jump to that. Now we have this part of the article here about these residents tipped in to buy a VR headset, and it was a moment of awakening to VR experiences and how the immersive virtual reality works. And this is the person who started, and it says, like many others in generation, he'd grown up in MMORPGs and so forth. And he began taking up coding after open source ultimately for Argentina. So this is me in Buenos Aires, by the way. Experience the proof format of his colleagues for potential building a virtual world. They also heavily inspired by Second Life, virtual world developed by Linden Lab. Like I was saying in my first impressions, it feels exactly the same, but it feels like a rudimentary version, where before there were roads and, it's more square, and it's the exact same concept, just not as adaptable. But we go back to the top. What is the metaverse? And this is the point. Defining the word metaverse can get muddy quickly. It's tempting to look at experiences like Second Life, yada 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 yada, and each pick of versions and concepts, but that road can suddenly leave you questioning whether a massive online game of collaboration tool fits the bill. So let's see, we talked about building a city, we talked about moving around the city, how big the city is, the gross domestic product of a city, the inspiration for the city, and the copy of said city. So what is the definition? We talk about so this person's writing about time. Maybe it's fuzzy. Maybe there's this intriguing alternatives for its definition. According to an entrepreneur and creator of, I guess, people might know what he created, he suggests that metaverse was a time when digital life is worth more to us than our physical life. This kind of reminds me of, I don't know if they ever fixed this, but some years ago they talked about how when people pass away, their digital lives are still there. Facebook accounts, MySpace, etc. For going back to that, when does the metaverse era kick in? When 51% of the world's digital lives are more valuable? So, this goes, he says the guys with calibration curves and something fundamental, which is place. Science fiction novel Snow Crash. There was a 66,000-mile-kilometer street skirted by attractions. You ingest the virtual experiences as if they were physical. Space and embodiment are not incidental. For physical flippening, we have a spatial internet, which makes sense. See, there's only one, it's not multiple. They're just virtual words that might exist within a larger one. Okay. It's for everyone. Nobody controls it. It's open. Hardware independent. It's in the network. And it's on the internet. So we go back to these definitions, and the metaverse is open and hardware independent. So down here we have the metaverse is the internet, enhanced and upgraded to consistently deliver 3D content, spatially organized information and experiences, and real-time synchronous communication. This feels crisp enough and roomy enough to allow for creativity. It's an internet, full dimensional experiences. Now, the guy he doesn't like the term, and it's not what we're building. He advocates for a spatial web or immersive web, which I guess explains why he's using a browser-based thing, but that's just the conduit. That's not the thing. But you tell me if that's not, if we didn't just describe everything I've been talking about. So our issue becomes, are we now redefining the wheel? Are we looking for a new definition of something that's existed for a long, long time? So we have this old book, one of the first reporters and metaverse consultant actually back in mid-2000s, I believe this is, that he's writing about. And he has the first chapter, of course, about what the metaverse is. He goes, even before the internet's wide adoption of online virtual worlds, simulation of contiguous reality in which multiple users interact at the same time. But with computing power so modest and graphics all but non-existent back then, anyway, we get into the all text-based adventures. If you ever see like all the, I guess, computer science things or jokes about the era, a lot of online games are text-based. And you type, there was no graphics yet back then. Now, peers argue that this online words the most ideal fantastic realities of purely for imaginative words. Anyway, the successors, the graphics-based versions, the second ones, had presidential candidates, senators, federal judge, and this, I think, is a great definition from a pretty decent judge. And he says, Federal Judge Posner says about the virtual world that MMORPG, if that's the correct acronym, are normally the important development. Each on audience, a virtual audience, in a virtual coliseum, with real money being invested in virtual worlds, and there needs to be law-like rules to resolve disputes, protect property rights, enforce contracts, protect intellectual property, and so forth. And we're going to talk about this in future editions as well. But going back to the definition, because that's what comes with the definition as well. You can define the word, but what does that mean at the end of the day? Where does that get you? There's a lot to say, but we're going to leave off with the concept of where these thoughts originated, which I guess is the annals of science fiction, but that's futurism, with William Gibson, Neil Stephenson, Victor Vinge, and so on. And they say that it's going to be, Stevenson emphasized that this is the 3D virtual world of cityscapes and foreboding neon bars, assessed through headman high-resolution displays. It's not just a fantasy world, but also a portal for interacting with in the internet datascape itself. And the novel of a guy who runs a successful meta business in the metaverse. At the same time, the future net was converging with intense vogue for virtual reality and initial experimentation of headset monitors, force feedback gloves, treadmills that would become an interest in an alternate world of tangible and tactile as our own. Well, now we got standing desk, I guess. Actually, I think I've seen bicycling desk and treadmill desk, so hey, you can connect it. And it became a grander techno-utopian banasum emanating from California visionaries who invoked, and we talked about practical shortcomings back then. But somewhere in this article that we started with, we did talk about that you don't need a headset. You can enter a virtual word on a monitor. And what does this sound like to you?